engineering to trade. Folks, we got a lot to talk about. You got Bitcoin up pretty big over the past several weeks, and you got tech and just S&P 500 making moves since the October lows. You know what else? Banks. A couple of banks are getting a little nervous about Apple Pay, so they're actually going to jump into the digital wallet space just to get ahead of Apple Pay and PayPal. You know what I'm saying? What else are you guys watching? Anything else paying attention to? Me, myself, those are the main things. And of course, we got earnings coming up in a little bit here, but I hope you guys had a great weekend. For those of you who are watching the show on the Tasty Live, for those of you watching the show on the Tasty Live webpage or watching on the Tasty Live app, go to the Tasty Live YouTube page. You know where it's at. The chat is there. Get in there, say what's up to me and all the other people in the chat. Check it out. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I kind of hung around. I didn't do a whole lot. Watching, of course, some of the NFL games. Looks like we got 4 teams to go until you got a Super Bowl, which is going to be always interesting. And it sucks because I did have a year-long bet on the Bills to win the Super Bowl. Not that I expected them to win. I just wanted that bet to go as far as it could go before I could possibly cash out. Hey, these things happen. I did spend a lot of time around a lot of kids this weekend. So I've mentioned before, I got 2 basketball teams that I'm coaching for my youngest son. He's playing on 2 different teams. Games are on Saturday and Sundays. We lost our Saturday game. We're 1-1 in that league. Our Sunday game was our first game. Sunday league is our first game, and we won. So that's where it is. That's what's driving me nuts these days. I hope you guys got different outlets too. Let's pull up some slides. Let's talk a little bit about this market. Dude, the market has been flying. I was actually a little bit surprised at the run that we came into today, but 2-day run we're working on here. Tech stocks are leading the way, of course. You got NVIDIA, you got Netflix moving like it's still, Netflix is moving like it's still earnings. NVIDIA is moving like it's having its earnings date now. Big moves there. Overall, markets are up. I think S&Ps are up like about 10% from that October low, and NASDAQ might be up a little bit more, might be up about 13%. And look, we saw a big move on Friday, which was really surprising. An all-day move to the upside, just sort of trending upwards on Friday as it was expiration, which is, you don't see those often. Usually you see on options expiration, a move that sort of happens to maybe one direction and then shifts to another during the day. And then, it's just usually kind of weird because you got a lot of people hedging their different options that are they're about to expire or whatever. And Friday's move was just very unusual. And then on top of that, you have today's move. And so you're starting to wonder what's going on with these essentially short squeezes, right? I mean, what's happening? And I think a lot of it is technical. We've reached through the 200-day moving average on the S&P 500. We've been talking about that for a while. Something's got to give it sooner or later. And in this case, we got rejected on it last week. But this week looks like so far anyway, we're making moves to the upside. I shouldn't say we got rejected last week. We got rejected earlier in the week last week. And then on Friday, we got to move right up to it. And then, of course, today we've punched through in a meaningful way. So what does this mean? Is there going to be more continuation? Well, we got to stick around and see, of course. But I tell you, it's an interesting time to do it because, again, this is a week that's fairly quiet. And we're going to talk more about that, right? But we got a couple of different macroeconomic data, but nothing substantial, I would feel. And of course, the one thing is kind of like GDP, but even still, we kind of know where that is. The biggest thing we're looking for, obviously, is next week. Even though we kind of have an idea that the Fed is going to do a 25 basis point rate hike, we're still paying attention to that, right? And then we got non-farm payrolls, which again, the job market thing has been something that everybody's been watching. So we got some meaningful moves. We got basically this short squeeze happening. But I don't know, keep an eye on it and let's see if we can get some meaningful follow through to the upside. Bitcoin has been on the move. It's up 39% year to date. And that global crypto market cap that had much aligned. I mean, it was, $2 trillion last year at one point, at the beginning of last year, dropped down below $1 trillion. Now it recaptures a trillion. And a lot of coins that really had been left for dead are even starting to rise back. But again, I think the main ones to pay attention to here are Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? Like those are the bread and butter. And Bitcoin's been strong recently. We've seen it sitting around the 23,000, which gets to our poll in the YouTube chat today. Is Bitcoin going to close above 25K? Is it going to get above 25K? Well, it closed there. I guess we'll have to wait and see. But I want to know what you guys think. I actually think at this point it might get there. It's not that far, but I want to know what you guys think. That's something in the chat. And then finally, as far as our news stories for today, JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America, they're looking to do some digital wallet to compete with Apple Pay. Now, most of these banks, I think, are the ones that sort of are part of that Zelle network, I believe. And or I should say they're going to work with the network that's related to Zelle. I'm not sure if all of these utilize Zelle. Some banks use Zelle. Some banks have a partnership in Zelle and some don't. Some have a partnership in Venmo. That's why I say that, because I think JP Morgan might have a partnership in Venmo, but I'm not sure. But nevertheless, they're worried about Apple Pay capturing some part of the market. Not only that, but PayPal too. They've been worried about the digital banking thing for a while, right? As they should be. And so they're working on their own digital wallets to sort of help people protect their purchases when they're online. But it's something that I think they've been missing for a while, and now they're trying to find ways to creep into the space. The whole consumer banking thing, of course, has always been theirs. They don't want Apple to steal more share. They don't want PayPal to steal more share. So it's kind of fascinating, too, when you look at the fact that Goldman, one of the things that they had an issue on with earnings was the Apple Pay thing, right? The consumer part. They actually lost money on that. It's kind of interesting that these banks are going after something that they just saw Goldman lose money on. I don't know what that means. I don't know. It's weird. Anyway, leftovers. The hottest and coldest commodities of 2022. Let's take a look at what was hot and what was not in 2022 on commodities. First, top 10 bests. You have coal. I can see it. I can dig it. Yeah. Lithium. Lithium is, of course, one of those things that has really taken off as we've gotten to EVs more than anything. Nickel, titanium, heating oil, uranium. Now, what's interesting is that platinum and iron and gold were actually kind of down on the year. Iron is one of those where you would expect to have used a lot, given how much more supply of homes we've had and other building materials. Gold, though, real quiet last year, right? Now, we've seen gold start to make a little bit of move this year, but real quiet last year, gold. Let's move ahead to the next slide. Now, here we got, of course, the 10 worst. And it's an interesting list. Most of them we don't trade, right? But, copper and aluminum and zinc, or copper and aluminum trade, copper for sure. We've seen copper start to make a big turn this year. It's been on the rise, and a lot of it has had to do with the reopening of China. Aluminum, it's made a return this year. Zinc, down 18% last year, man. Naphtha, I had to really kind of look, because when I first saw this, I thought it was naphthalene, which is a chemical, which they're not the same thing. Naphtha is just more like one of those what's the word? It's like campfire oil, not campfire. It's stuff that's used in a lot of lanterns. Yeah, well, apparently that's a commodity, and that was down 19%. Nat gas down 20% last year, and also still down again this year. Been ugly for nat gas. Of course, nat gas was really, it's funny to see this. Nat gas was down 20% because at the beginning of the year, nat gas was up big, right? Interesting. Rubber down 26%. Cobalt 26%. 37%. Propane was down 37% last year for those of you who did a lot of cookouts. And then, of course, magnesium was down 54% on the year. So those are your hot and cold commodities of the year. Not a whole lot of surprises, except for we knew gold didn't do a whole lot last year. Yeah. Let's move ahead to the next slide. And before I move forward, guys, those who are in the chat, like and subscribe to all this content, man, please. We got 82 people watching the show. We only got 7 likes. We need more than that. You know what I'm saying? George B, what's up, man? How you doing? Brandon Hahn, what's going on, dude? Happy Monday, my friend. Hope you guys are all doing well as you're watching the show. So, obviously, one of the things that we've been paying attention to a lot over the past year is bond yields. We know the front end of the curve is way more accentuated than the back end of the curve. And what we've seen over the last month is yields are starting to drop. Now, what's interesting is that I think at this point, you're starting to price in the end of the Fed rate hike cycle and possibly cuts coming. Some people think this year, I say 2024. because that's the only thing that explains. We saw for a while there, the middle of the curve was way higher. 10 years were at, look at that, 10-year yields were at 4% basically a month ago. And now they're about 3.5%, I think. We could look at the actual future. 10-year yields at 3.5% right now. So that's a big difference, right? And so you can see people starting to get ahead of the Fed. The market's starting to get ahead of the Fed. I think that's another reason for this short squeeze that we're seeing in this market, right? But bond yields have decreased quite a bit. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on that. If there's is going to be a change in bond yields. I don't think so. I think 2-year yields are going to continue to remain higher. And I think until we actually get cuts, you're not going to see big differences. Like we said, we're expecting another 25 basis point of rate hikes. That'll get us to 4.5 to 4.75 for the Fed funds rate. You're seeing it already, right? You're seeing it at your banks. You're seeing the difference in rate hikes. You're seeing CDs have higher rates. You're seeing treasuries obviously are higher for those of you who are looking to buy treasuries these days. So this has been an interesting thing. And I tell you, this is something that even as a trader 10 years ago, I didn't pay much attention to, but rates didn't move a whole lot 10 years ago. I mean, we didn't have as many rate hikes as we've seen. This is the fastest rate hiking cycle we've seen, I think, maybe in history. So it's been wild. But again, rates are down nowadays. Let's move ahead to the next slide. Little dope chart here we got. So this is a chart looking at what your returns would be, I guess if you perfectly did it, but from buying the S&P 500 when the VIX is over 30, right? So remember that inverse relationship between VIX and SPX. If VIX is over 30, SPX is probably lower on the whole, right? And then when VIX is 20, SPX is usually higher. I mean, just look at, the case study here that we've got. Now, and that's not to say right now, I'm not exactly sure the numbers. If VIX is even higher than it was when VIX was last 30, I'm not even sure. But anyway, you know what this is getting at. What's it like to buy the S&P 500 when the VIX goes over 30 as a strategy, right? And then what's it like to close that trade out when VIX gets over 20 and then wait and do it again? Now, you'd be waiting for a while right now because we haven't been over 30 since when's the last time we were over 30? VIX hasn't been over 30 since October. So it's been 3 months. Yeah, it's been a while. But this is kind of an interesting thing, looking at the idea of doing that trade. Now, notice it doesn't say selling VIX when the S&P 500 is 20, because just because the S&P 500 goes to 20 doesn't mean the market is going to go down, right? Like if you did that on Friday, you'd be losing today. So sometimes the market just continues to roll. And we saw that in the famous 2017, where the market just seemed to go up every single day. So I wouldn't necessarily be looking to sell VIX at 20, but the idea of buying VIX or buying SPX when VIX gets above 30 is somewhat interesting, right? And then just holding. It's just a strategy. But if you did that, look at this. These are the times where it would have worked out well for you. Let's look at more recent times. I always like to look at everything. Let's look at 98. I mean, obviously we see the one data point in 1991, but 98, 17% you would have made. 1999, you would have made 29%. Got a little dicey there in 2000 to 2003. I think there was just too much movement, right? Too much movement for it to actually work. Then you got 2007, you would have did 12% better, 7% in 2008. That's really interesting, right? In 2008. That's an interesting one, because when VIX got above 30 and it just kind of stayed elevated at 50, 60, 80 for a while there, and markets just kept going down. So you would have had to really white knuckle and hold on to that S&P 500 there for a while. 2009, it didn't work, right? Negative 6%. 2010, 3%. 2012, 10%. Yada, yada, yada. 21, 36%. 2022. 26%. So really interesting look at what would happen if you bought the S&P 500 when VIX is above 30 and close the trade out when VIX gets below 20. Something interesting. Let's move ahead to the next slide. So we heard, of course, Spotify is the latest company. They're cutting like 6% of their workforce and stock is up. This has definitely become the new beat and raise. I got to give Option Talk a little shout out there. He came up with this idea. I actually just retweeted that early today. But it's true. It's become the new earnings beat and raise. If you're cutting costs and you're getting rid of people, your stock goes up. We saw this happen with Meta recently. We saw Amazon the other day mention it. Their stock went up. Google, same deal last week. Roku also last week. Salesforce in recent times. HP also did this. A lot of these tech companies are releasing people, and most of them are willing to say they hired too much during the pandemic. They overhired, and maybe it was just, a moment in time. Obviously, everything was going tech. They needed all hands on deck. I didn't even make that rhyme, but it did. But it worked out in the meantime. But then finally, we get around to the next year, and things start to change for tech companies. People are coming back to work. People are starting to move around again. People are, a lot of the things that we needed those extra people for eventually wasn't necessary in a lot of these companies. And unfortunately, they had to cut people. But it's interesting to watch their stock rise. But again, it's been this theme of they're cutting costs, and this is going to be good for their earnings and EBITDA, more whatever else you want to put in there, PE ratios, blah, blah, blah. It's supposed to work out well for them. We'll see what happens. But this is the weirdest trend to watch, isn't it? It's kind of strange. Let's move ahead to the next slide. A few more things to close out here, and then we'll get to the platform. We'll take a look at a couple of earnings names. We got Logitech, we got 3M, got DHI, Danaher, got GE, Halliburton, Johnson & Johnson, LMT, and RTX got a couple of defense name earnings. UNP also has earnings. Verizon, I guess it has earnings. Nobody pays attention to Verizon earnings, right? Do you? I don't know. Existing home sales, man, suffer the biggest annual drop ever, 11 straight month lower. Not really much of a surprise here. Most of us know that people are slowing down on the home buying situation. That was a real big deal 2 years ago in 2020 and 2021. As most people were either just moving further out, moving into places, moving out of cities. And that has really changed. That trend has changed. So for those people that work in that field, or maybe you do work in that field, it's obviously been a big change, right? But hopefully you cleaned up before the change happened. So really not a surprise here. 11 straight month lower for existing home sales is obviously rates are higher. It's making people a little hesitant to buy right now if they're looking. They're probably just going to stay in rents, which, rents were higher last year. They started to come back down. Fourth quarter GDP is going to be coming up on Thursday. We also got new home sales coming up, which I'm going to guess is probably going to be lower as well. And initial jobless claims. All of those are coming up on Thursday, but for the most part, fairly quiet with the macro data. And then the number of S&P 500 stocks above the 50-day moving average, 359. It's good for 71%. Let's move to the platform. Let's take a look. What have I done? I don't know. What's going on? You guys got any questions for me? I'm certainly looking to see. Let me scroll back here in the chat. And Dixie's in a downtrend today and or ever. Yeah. Bitcoin. Let's look at the poll here. We got 62 votes. 60% of the people say yes. 40 that Bitcoin will rise above 25K. 40% say no. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Anybody put anything new on today? My man Brandon Han is asking. I'm curious myself if anybody put anything new. What else we got? Any other questions? I'm in TLT currently for that. What are some good ways to play the euro with options? Well, you can play. 6E is probably the best. You're right. Ball Club is right. Bull Club. Bull Club is right. /6E options are pretty decent. They're pretty liquid. FXE is sometimes not that great, but I'd rather play /6E for sure. I'd rather play /6E. It's just super liquid, and it just seems to have better markets for the most part. Let me pull out my old trusty sheet and see what I've done here. I forget. Sometimes I just go out and do a bunch of things, man. I had a Netflix calendar on for earnings. I had the last week expiration, and I was long. The 350. Basically, I was long the 350 call spread. And Netflix, the calendar spread, the Jan Feb 350 call spread. Closed that out last week. I didn't want to be long this call coming in, and I wasn't interested in selling any upside, but I probably should have. I wish I did. So now I'm trying to play to the downside. Netflix has had another big run, right? Looking at the chart, I wouldn't say it's extended. It's just a play, honestly. This is definitely not any. I mean, I just figure IVR is fairly low, and stocks made a big run recently. So I'm just trying to play some downside move, trying to see if there's going to be a little bit of a reversion, maybe after 2 days of up in the market. That's kind of the market we've seen over the last several weeks. If it doesn't work, that means the market's going higher. That means we are starting maybe trying to get back to a bull market. I don't believe that. I don't believe we're going to get back to a bull market quite yet. I believe it's going to be a lot slower than that. And so as a result, I'm trying to find a couple of names here and there to get some short deltas. NVIDIA is the other name that I'm doing that in. I bought a put spread in NVIDIA today. One of the things I failed to mention early on, I think NVIDIA they're saying NVIDIA is going to benefit from ChatGPT. I don't know if that's the case or not. I don't know if that's just the usual Wall Street rhetoric, you know what I mean? But they're saying like this is the name that will benefit the most. There's going to be a lot of companies that's going to need. I don't even know the damn narrative. I don't believe this shit, honestly. And so for now, I'm just buying a put spread just as a trade. You know what I mean? It's still earnings vol. I'm not necessarily buying super expensive vol. It's 27 IVR. And this vol is going to hold up. It's not going to collapse on me because it doesn't have earnings for another couple of weeks. So I'm cool with that. And hopefully this thing will fall sooner than later within the next few days or a week. And I can, make a 40 to 50% profit and close out my spread. You know what I'm saying? So that's that. What else? No, for sure. They make a lot of AI chips. You're right. They do make a lot of AI chips. I'm familiar with that. I'm aware. I just don't know if what they're saying today is that, I don't know, is this thing about to take over the complete street, ChatGPT? I don't know. And if ChatGPT is the reason that NVIDIA is moving, then why isn't Microsoft moving? Microsoft should be the biggest beneficiary, right? Kind of weird. So, if anything, I should probably look to, I'm about to talk myself into a trade. I should probably look to find a way to get long, and maybe a calendar is in order. I should try to find, because I don't want to buy outright. I don't want to buy a call spread in here. IVR is 40. That's kind of elevated, but I should probably get long Microsoft and get short deltas, I'm saying. Long deltas in Microsoft, short deltas in NVIDIA. That might not be a spread that works out. I don't know. But that's basically what I'm lining up for, because I don't necessarily think NVIDIA should be moving this much on ChatGPT. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just one thing. Maybe I'm wrong on this. I don't think it's taking over the whole street. And again, if it is, then why is Microsoft moving? Because Microsoft also has a big investment in them. So I guess that's my thing. Maybe that's what I want to do. I want to be long Microsoft deltas, short deltas in NVIDIA. What else have I done here? Oh, yeah. So I put on the NVIDIA put spread. I put on the Netflix put spread. I closed out my gold calls. I did have some gold calls. I still believe in gold. I still believe gold is I like the idea of being long gold. IVR is still fairly low. And again, when gold really does make a move, if it continues to move to the upside, volatility will get bid. That's how gold works. But I just feel right now, because of this week, there's so many earnings over this week and next week. I wanted to free up some capital to be able to play more the names and the earnings and the market as what's going on. So I don't know. I'm okay with that. Jamal, do you explore, or can you share any one DTE vertical strategies on the U.S. indexes? So I don't do a ton of them, but when I do, I usually do SPX. Mostly because, again, you got to be, I don't have many, but when you do these, you got to be aware that this is just 1 day premium and it's going to expire, right? And so every now and again, I may look at, something like this and just say, okay, I know I'm buying an at the money or not at the money, a little bit upside call or a little bit downside put on a day where I think the market's going to close lower. Again, this is 1 hour left in this trading day. I haven't gotten I guess the market has pulled back, huh? Markets are pulling back right now. So on what I usually do on those 1 DTE options or 0 DTE options, either or, these are relatively expensive, to be honest with you. But if and when I do a 0TTE, I may look at SPX and, pick a direction, honestly, as a hedge maybe to my whole portfolio. And the best thing about these is that if they expire in the money, it expires the cash, right? So always keep that in mind. But I don't really do a ton of them. I don't really do a ton of near-term option expirations. So let's see. What else is there? I did. But the other thing I do in SPX, actually, and I did one of these today, was a call fly. So put fly, sorry. So I did a $25 wide put fly and bought this one, I think, for $3, right? Trying to remember what I did it for. $3.30 I did for a $25 wide fly. The 4025, 4,000, 39.75. In the event that we kind of stay in this range most of the week, which I kind of feel a lot of times on earnings, this is unusual. Once we start getting to the meat of these earnings in the market, I feel like we're going to sort of trade in and around 4,000 this week. That's just my guess. So that's my plan. So because of that, I threw this put fly on that expires on Friday. We'll see where it lands, see what ends up. And again, the best thing about this is, again, it's an index option. Index options expire to cash, and so that's really nice. I don't have to worry about it, so I don't mind holding these. Fix is also an index option that expires to cash, but you don't necessarily always want to hold those to expiration just because of the way the expiration process works in VIX. A lot of times your option could easily flow in and out of the money fairly quickly just because of the way they do their expiration process. It's not saying anything bad about their expiration process. It's just something you should be aware of, and you don't necessarily want to hold VIX options to expiration. But fairly, I'm just kind of fairly, quiet here, waiting on some of these earnings to get started up in the markets. And I don't know, man. We'll see what ends up happening here over these next couple of days. I'm really interested in looking at earnings from Microsoft, interested in looking at earnings from Tesla, trying to find other ways to play some of them. We'll talk more about some of these tomorrow, but I'm not really interested in any of the ones that we talked about today, the LMTs. Well, I am interested in LMT to some degree because I want to see if that has any bearing on Boeing earnings, which are going to be the following day. So that's all we got for today's show, folks. Thanks for watching. And as always, be smart, be patient, trade small, trade often. I'll see you guys later.
I need you here to be bright.